I had a very different view of what I was going to experience at Ironman Texas with the venue. And it wasn't anything that I just kind of overly researched. It was just what I kind of pictured the course and the venue being like. And I got to tell you, I was not just pleasantly surprised, but I was kind of blown away.
Welcome home. Welcome back from Ironman Texas, my man.
Welcome back. Thank you. It is Monday. It's still April 29th, 2019. Thank you for joining us. Crushing Iron Podcast. What are we, episode 263, 264?
Yeah, 263, man.
263. And welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We come to you every Monday and Thursday. We're all over the place. And yes, I was at Ironman Texas this last weekend and returned home yesterday and back at it today with another we have a big week here for our athletes, all over, racing all over the place. Virginia 70.3, St. George 70.3, and we have our first actual tri-camp here in Nashville that starts on Wednesday. So not much downtime, but hey, I wouldn't have any other way. Excited to have everyone come in town. We'll have that from Wednesday to Sunday. And then kind of what's considered a down week, I guess, with not much action. And then we'll be at Chattanooga 70.3 with about 45 to 50 of our athletes, and then families and friends and spectators alike, ready to have some fun. And you went one of our favorite cities.
Yep. The Crushing Iron Podcast. If you haven't listened before, we're all about figuring out ways to be happy and healthy in the sport and find more fitness and mental health and happiness in general.
Man, we could all use a little help with the mental health aspect. But yeah, check us out on iTunes. The biggest favor you could definitely do is subscribe, leave us a review, let us know your thoughts. Dig back into the archives, probably give you a better idea of what we're about in terms of the broad spectrum that we cover. And then if you want to be part of the conversation, you can always just head over to Facebook if you're on it and search Crushing Iron Group. And we'll let you in there after you answer a super quick, hopefully simple question. Great conversation in there, great community, really good people, a lot of answers and a whole lot of experience and wisdom. And then for more info on the rest of the things that we do besides this sometimes great but often mediocre podcast, you can head over to crushingiron.com and check it out. We've got info on coaching, training packages, swim analysis, our training, triathlon and swim camps, blog, videos, gear, a few pictures of Mike and his Speedo. Other than that, we are locked and loaded. And check us out. But yeah, I'm super. It was, man.
Well, hang on a second. I am Mike. This is Coach Robbie.
Sorry.
And he was in Texas for 4 days. Got to experience Ironman Texas for the first time.
Yeah. It was cool because it was the very first. No, that's not true. This is a total lie. So I shouldn't even say it. But I was thinking that it was the first race I had ever spectated without doing it first, and that's a lie. Because I spectated your race at Ironman Wisconsin 6 years ago. I had never been there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, but that was another lifetime. So, but basically the first one.
And now let me ask you a question. You got to start with this question. I think you texted me and said that Texas is the best North American venue.
I never said that. God, don't throw me to the wolves already. Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. I thought that was great.
I have to tell you, though, so we'll do...
That's what I was feeling from you or something. Maybe it was emotional at the time.
Of course, we're all prisoner of the moment. Let's be honest. But I got to tell you...
That was the greatest race ever.
It was the greatest race. Total prisoner of the moment. I think we're going to pack up, screw moving to Chattanooga. We're coming to Houston. I'm going to get a house on the course. I'm a trainer every day and do it every single year. Breaking news, no. But no, I got two, that'll be our two podcasts this week are going to be basically about the experience in Texas and just a really cool experience I had as a coach, but there's so many other things to kind of break off and take away from that. And then I do want to also give just the other podcast for this week, just be about just the total race review and what I saw as a spectator and what I heard from the athletes and what I observed as a coach. And so we can, whichever one you want to jump in on today, we can do that one first. And then for Thursday, we can do the other one. So I'll let you kind of be the director, producer in charge and tell me which one do you want to hear, the experience or the recap?
I think, man, now it's going to be like, I wish you would have picked this one.
See, that's
I wish you wouldn't even have brought this up. I thought we would just talk about, I want to talk about, I think I want to go into your, oh boy, aren't they the same thing?
Not really, because I want to give, I'm going to go with the recap first.
Yeah, I think the recap makes more sense first because honestly, dude, and I think because I can add, because I was at the Nashville Marathon this weekend and I had a bunch of thoughts too that might kind of dovetail in there a little bit. I don't want to get into that, but there are some things I learned and some just interesting points about that as well. So let's.
So I got to say, now, I do have to give a caveat in that I think my level of impression was raised because I had a very different view of what I was going to experience at Ironman Texas with the venue. And it wasn't anything that I just kind of had overly researched. It was just what I kind of pictured the course and the venue being like. And I got to tell you, I was not just pleasantly surprised, but I was kind of blown away. I know that the race in general had got a whole lot of negative press last year, and rightfully so, with the drafting on the course. It also had perfect temps. I mean, you had even texted me yesterday or maybe Saturday about the times were faster. Last year was an anomaly. It is always a highly contested, very, very competitive race. Mostly from the professional standpoint, most years a little bit down this year, I think, just from what I saw from a star power standpoint. But age group wise, it's one of the most competitive races there is because especially in North America, because they offer twice the amount of Kona slots. So, like looking back through the slot allocation this morning to kind of to prep for this podcast, there were 9 Kona slots available in the 40 to 44 age group. And I think 12 available in the 45 to 49. So you get a international field because of the time of year and its proximity to other countries, but then it's also you get a higher level playing field because athletes that really think they're close on the end of that needle they may not be able to get first or second, but if they can get top 10, they got a shot. So it's always competitive. But when we rolled up there on Thursday to hit the race expo and talk to a few of the athletes, the Woodlands area is beautiful. If you've been to Houston but never been to the Woodlands, they're like two different countries. Houston, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of like meh. It's like a concrete jungle with like strip malls and nice stuff here and there. Okay, city. But the Woodlands is beautiful. Tons of trees. It runs along the waterway. It's just a very, very nice part of town, which I found kind of surprising. And I haven't been to a race 70.3 or full where it's in what I think most people will call, like, it's not the center of downtown. Obviously, it's in like what most like it's a very, very affluent area. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is surprising because you would think a lot of areas might not be, let's just be honest, a bunch of rich people probably don't want a bunch of people invading their territory on a Saturday.
Yeah.
It was a great, it was a great setup. And I got to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Wow. That's pretty high out of you, man.
It is. It's really, because I'm pretty critical because we do these a lot. We've never given out a 5 of 5 because we just don't.
You had the best experience ever up at Ohio and gave him a 4.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, Ken was not happy.
I know. Ken, I love you, buddy. We'll be up there again in July, so,
You got a chance to bring that rating up, man.
Pizza and Snickers, homie. Pizza and Snickers.
VIP treatment.
I want to, before I kind of go into the swim bike run and what I noticed and why I gave it such a high review, because we do. We love doing these race recaps and reviews, and then also previews. A lot of people download and listen to them, so I really enjoy doing them. I think you do them great as an athlete, but as an observer, I think you get a lot of take in things objectively. But I got to tell you, we had a total of 9 athletes racing, 5 on the team, 4 in the club. I haven't heard a single negative comment
other than
from
an
athlete. Well, I'm talking about things that the race organizers themselves can control. Like, usually have complaints about not enough volunteers at the expo, the line was too long, the swim start was messed up, there weren't enough things at the aid stations, the volunteers weren't in the right spot. Because we're triathletes, we love to complain about everything. I got my swim cap on in my packet, and it had 2 wrinkles already. They love to complain about little tiny shit.
Sorry about that one.
Yeah, I have had 0 complaints. 0, and again, triathletes love to complain. None. And what I saw as an observer, I didn't see anything to complain about really either. I complained about a few spectators, of course, but overall, it was great. The venue is beautiful. The swim has got to be the most spectator-friendly swim course, easily. And I've got to say that the run course is probably the most spectator-friendly run course I've ever been on. It has moved ahead of Ironman Wisconsin.
Wow. And that's a lot of it has to do with the 3 loops. Is there 3?
A lot of it has to do with the 3 loops, and so I
think that's the way to go, man.
I keep going back to it, and as much as, because you and I were both down at Texas 70.3 last year, and as much as I bemoaned about the 3 loops and the curves and the turns and the stuff, I like it. Yeah, I like knowing where I'm going. Like my biggest Louisville is a great example. You kind of get the hustle and bustle of the downtown on like the loops and the finish, but way out there, there's these like brutal long straightaways of just darkness and silence and straightaway, to where it just makes it seem like an eternity. Whereas the race course in Texas, you're always either around people, making a turn, going around a corner. You really have to stay engaged. I also feel like. But I'll start at the swim. If you had anything, I'll shut up for a second. But I wanted to start with what I observed in the swim, what my thoughts are about the swim in Ironman Texas.
No, I don't have anything. I saw a lot of the pictures, and I'm really curious to hear, because I can't really put it together exactly, but like how it started and why you think it's so spectator friendly. I assume it's because there's a channel and you can kind of like just sort of walk along and. Yeah.
So one thing, and I got to kind of eat some crow right here.
Okay.
They started the age groupers right on time at 6:40. And they got everyone in the water by 7:04.
That's a rolling start.
Rolling start. I was incredibly impressed. They had 2, and I think a lot of that has to do with the volunteers in the chute and how it's kind of set up. But so let me just say this: I was first pleasantly surprised and shocked that so Summer Scanders, an athlete of ours, she lives in Houston, was our homestay for the week, and my race chaperone. We parked. Obviously, neither of us were competing. We didn't go to bike transition, which was at the end of the swim, obviously. We parked maybe, 5 minutes from the swim start. We were able to walk all the way up to the picture I posted in the closed Facebook group. We were able to walk right up to the swim start arch and just hang out. Like, so if you're coming with family or friends, or you want to be around people, it's not like Louisville where you kind of have to say goodbye after a certain amount of time, or other places where you kind of cave in. You could just basically walk and hang out with your athlete right until they actually like put their ankles in the water, which I thought was very, very neat. It was just, there was this huge parking lot where they had tons of room, porta johns. I think they were dropping off their special needs bags around there too. But it was just huge. There was tons of room. It wasn't super crowded. They ended up having 2 entry points underneath the arch. They kind of split in half, and they sent off 4 people So 8 people every 5 seconds. So it was 4 people in each arch or in each line, and then it beeped off, and they sent 4 people in each alley every 5 seconds, and they blazed through it. So as much crap as I like to give Rolling Stars, because I do have, I don't like aspects of it, I have to give major props to the race organizers and the volunteers of the Swim Start for getting everyone in the water so quickly. It wasn't like an hour or it's anything like that, like it is at some races. It was very quick. It was very well done, and I think a lot of it had to do with just how much room they had at the start to kind of hang out. You didn't have to go stand in line if you didn't want to. It was also wetsuit legal, which was kind of surprising. I think when you sign up for a race in Texas, no matter what time of year it was wetsuit legal. So you just had tons of time. You didn't feel rushed. Athletes were sitting down. I was able to get, obviously, right up on the Swim Start, and then I was actually able to walk out onto one of the little floating docks, kind of pier things, where I was able to shoot video of some of the pros starting. It's just very accessible. And then you also, just behind the Swim Start, so you're looking behind it, is just a bridge. So you can stand there as an athlete, friend, family, whatever, spectator. You can stand there and watch it from behind. And then, like you said, it goes along this waterway the entire time. You're swimming along, and I have some feedback to give about that in terms of people who might be looking to do this course. It's along this waterway the entire time, and so there's very nice houses to look at. Obviously, you're probably not like thinking about Zillow shopping while you're doing your Ironman swim, but very good scenery, water quality, probably not the most outstanding, but let's be honest, a lot of times they really are. So once you go out on the swim, you make a U-turn, you come back in towards the waterway, come back in, but all the way along the waterway is so picture like the last 400 meters of Louisville. Where you swim close to kind of like that concrete sidewalk waterway area where people are usually standing there and cheering.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a paved bike path all along the route going to the finish. So you could walk along the waterway after you kind of go over the bridge and come down for the entire swim and cheer.
Wow. So you could almost literally follow somebody.
You could almost, you're going to lose them when they go out and then come back and turn around, obviously. But if you kind of knew what what their stroke looked like, you could probably wait in the corner, and then you could probably follow them all the way to the finish. And then it gets narrow in the canal. So it's very, very spectator friendly. It's even spectator friendly as they come out of the water. Tons of places to sit, great visibility. They coming out kind of one by one as they ran up. We posted up about maybe 10 or 15 meters through the swim arch. The only thing I would say in terms of if you're thinking about looking at this race, pros are definitely that it's open water, but it's protected, so it's not a lake or an ocean, so you're not going to get a ton of waves. It's very easy to sight. Because you basically just get funneled into an area where you can't go more than like 25 meters out of the direction. But that also leads to it being a little more crowded. I would say it's probably a little bit more of a technical swim and maybe a little bit of a slower swim. Reason being, it's usually not wetsuit legal, which was obviously a reason some people won't do the race. It's in fresh water, so you don't get that extra buoyancy that you might have in saltwater. And then it's two things. It's crowded it's a little bit crowded. You got to be ready for some contact as it gets funneled into the canal and into the narrowest part of the waterway going towards the finish. You're kind of streamlined in there, so there is a little bit more contact. So it does get more congested. There's not enough room to swim around people if you're a faster swimmer. And then the other biggest thing I think people don't necessarily think about is the water is also fairly shallow, which also makes for a slower swim. And so there's just things to think about. It's traditionally a slower swim just because of those factors, not because it's more difficult. You just don't have some of the other advantages you have in other events and races with it. There is no current. There's lots of congestion. It's kind of like herding cattle. Like it just looked like you're just got to kind of swim and relax, and you're not going to get past, probably. You're not going to pass in front of you. You're just going to kind of sit in like slow moving traffic per se. So if you're thinking about doing it, it's not really a negative, but it's maybe a thought process to go with you if you're contemplating this race on where to seed yourself. But again, and the water quality isn't necessarily the finest, but
that's a bigger issue on so many levels. Just water quality everywhere, man. Seems like it's...
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but so overall, I mean, it was great. We were able to see every single one of the athletes we were looking for coming out of the water. Which super easy to grab them and see them, and then run them up towards the bike. So, I mean, again, overall, I gave it a spectator-wise, super friendly. Especially just because I think bike spectating is a little bit overrated on most courses, just because you're only going to see people for like half a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before the swim and after the swim is when you can really make the most contact with an athlete or your athlete or loved one, and then the run course. So having those two were huge thumbs up really kind of set this race apart. But so swim, I mean, very well done. But again, those are some factors I would think of in terms of pros and cons if you're debating on doing this race and you're thinking through the swim.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, and is it a relatively short run to the transition, or is it kind of a longer? Is it pretty
about average.
About average.
It's about average. It's not any longer. You don't have to run up a helix like at Wisconsin. I would say it's probably average to maybe shorter than. It was just they have the perfect setup there. I mean, they had transition in this huge field, like even ran through like a pre-built like concrete structure coming out of it with your bike. I think I took a picture and maybe sent it to you in terms of what the transition looked like. It's just a perfect setup, and they come out of the water there and they grab their bikes and they head out on the road. But I would say it's probably either average length to a little bit shorter. I mean, obviously Ironman transition it's going to be hard for you to tell the transition times and make a decision how long is transition, because transition for an Ironman is about as long as you want to make it. But I think some of the pros probably got out of there, and I would say in probably 4 to 5 minutes, which obviously they have primary placement for most everything. But I think most age groupers probably could, if you wanted to and you were ready and you were prepared and you weren't trying to do like a total wardrobe change, like I think you could probably get out of there in a decent, like I just glanced right now, the guy who won the 40 to 44 age group had a transition of 4 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say Starkey's T1 was 2:33.
Right. So I mean, I would say, I would say you can go fast. And so I think, and then usually this race isn't wetsuit legal, so that's just one less thing you have to do.
Oh yeah, that's.
I think the
pros weren't in wetsuits, right?
The pros were not, correct. So the time you might quote unquote lose in the swim just by it being congested and fresh water, and it's not technical, it's just a slow swim. Like I would compare this to the Ohio 70.3 and Muncie 70.3 swim. They're not hard. They're just slow swims. They're just the conditions and the environment and the water and the course just make for a slower swim. Doesn't mean you're going to have to put extra energy out there. It just means it's just kind of one of those swims. It's just a slower swim. But overall, great spectating. And just very, very fun. And I gotta say, we were able to leave after the swim and then walk over to the bike out and still catch the people that we wanted to catch. Walk back to the car, and then we were able to access and leave, which I think is another part of the race that I haven't really experienced before. Was we left the scene, we left the race course, we left the main finish line area, the bike area, and drove back to the Scandridges, which is about 20 minutes away, and again with no traffic, not having to wait around for a while. It was just super easy to get in and out of the venue itself. So even if you weren't staying there on site on one of the hotels that are right along the run course, right there smack in the Woodlands, you could have easily left and hopped back on the highway and gone home. Like we were back at their house for I think 3-something hours watching Facebook Live on the TV. I mean, it was great. I went run in the neighborhood, which is something I've never experienced and I've always been kind of nervous to do because A, I don't want to sit in traffic, B, I don't want to get stuck, and then I don't want to get worried about not getting back in time. But so again, that also to me was a huge plus for athletes who might not want to stay right there on site or want to get a bigger house. That if you wanted to, you could have easily left with basically no interference. We didn't sit in traffic. We got right back on the highway. It's very very accessible. They did a very good job of the logistics with this venue, and I think allowing yourself to leave and go places really opens up the opportunities for people obviously who live close by and want to go home with kids. But then on site, they had not only did they have a bunch of hotels, but they had a movie theater. I think they opened up at like 8 a.m. The movie theater right there, like smack dab close to the finish line, and you saw a bunch of parents with their kids going to watch like the Avengers Endgame at like 10 a.m.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Killing some. It was just very neat. It was in there. Everybody seemed to love it. There's a lot of stuff to do. You did see quite a few spouses. We actually quick, because I'll talk about the bike course in a minute, but we were coming back in to catch the bike, and we ran into this family, and they were asking like, where are you from? Who are you cheering? She's like, yeah, I'm cheering on my husband today, and I'm just hoping he does well. I'm kind of anxious, and she's carrying like 19 shopping bags. I was like, yeah, you're shopping your feelings off, huh? You're not too anxious. You're like, yeah, honey, can't check the credit card for the next 6 hours, so I'm gonna go get busy.
Oh man!
But there's just a lot of stuff to do. There's just a lot of stuff to do down there, and I'll talk about the bike course, but it was.
So they throw because they throw the bike course right out on the highway, basically, right? So that's another thing I was thinking.
Yeah,
maybe the neighborhood doesn't care as much, maybe because they're out of their hair.
Yeah, and so I think that's a huge part of it, and I think probably one of the main reasons they're going to be able to continue to have this race is because now, and again, obviously there was all of the negative feedback and negative press from
this is crazy to hear, man, because my image of Ironman Texas was basically like traffic cams capturing draft groups.
I knew they had talked about on the at the athlete meeting that they weren't going to either. I don't know if it was true or not because I wasn't out there and I haven't asked my athletes specifically if this was true or not, but they were going to say they weren't going to allow any media cameras on the toll road. They were going to make room for marshals. I asked a couple of the athletes that they said they didn't see nearly as many draft packs as they thought they would. Obviously, you're going to see some on every road. But so I think a few things, and I'll talk about the bike course unless you have something. I don't want to be the only guy talking here, but
No, I'm just as curious too. I want to hear all about how the bike course unfolds.
Yeah, I think a few things that I think we need to think about as people who were judging last year and then this year is that the bike course was shorter last year. It was a little bit short. It was not the full 112. The conditions last year were perfect. Very little to low wind, and it was cooler. And they had obviously no marshals on the road, so people were just cheating as best they could. Not everybody, but some people were obviously, and that's what led to these huge pelotons. So you come out of transition and you head onto the Woodlands Parkway. You turn around, then you go back out, basically, and you head out towards the Hardy Toll Road, which is where you're basically going to do two out and backs. So a couple positives about the Hardy Toll Road is it's not totally closed to traffic, I don't believe, but you're super safe. You get the whole side of the highway. The only thing you probably have to worry about are huge pelotons and them taking up a lot of room. Now, where this year differed from last year and what I think made for times being a little bit slower were a couple factors. One, it was warmer. B, there were more draft marshals from what I hear and what I heard at the post-race from the few athletes that I talked about and then at the athlete briefings. But the biggest thing was there was a direct headwind. And I think you could probably see this if you were tracking anybody. Obviously, if you were there, you know this for a fact. But if you were tracking people, you could tell with these two specific splits, okay, that's a headwind. And then B, there's the tailwind. So the great thing about the Hardy Toll Road is it's a straight shot. You're just going straight. The bad thing is if there happens to be a perfect dead-on headwind, you're heading into it for what ends up being close to 20 miles in one direction. There is nothing more frustrating as a cyclist than a headwind.
Yeah, that's a long ways.
So it's not just, it's just demoralizing and frustrating and debilitating. It just, even though you know you're going to get one on the return trip, it just still, the speed makes up for itself, but I think what it does to you mentally and emotionally is another thing. And so I think that also leads to more separation and making for a more fair race, is having to go through the wind conditions, because there was some crosswinds too as they came back in. But so you go out on the Hardy Toll Road, basically 20 miles straight into the wind, then you turn around, you get a break, you get 20 miles with the wind, knowing full well you have to do this same out and back one more time. So you know you got to go back. So basically, it ended up being around 40 miles straight into the wind.
Ah, man, I would have loved to have seen some faces as they turned around for that second loop.
Yes, which is just brutal for athletes, no matter what you're going, no matter if you're going by effort, you're going by power, you're going by miles per hour. It's just got to be super frustrating and just really mentally, not just mentally and emotionally taxing, but the other elements of not just physically having to be engaged with your legs, but also keeping as low a profile as you possibly can. Just being very, very, very small, again, creating a low profile, and then just holding on a little bit extra tight to make sure you don't get blown over. And the last thing you want to do is sit up and take a drink. And so it's made it it was a much more difficult day in that aspect. And again, that's why you saw quite a few slower times, I feel like, in terms of the bike course. And I think that one of the main reasons was that total overall picture of it being a legit distance, the heat, and then the straight on headwind. I think it caused much more separation, was a lot more even for the day.
Yeah, because going into the wind for 20 miles, and then you're like, okay, well, now I got to really suck it up and make that time back, especially if you're looking at your speed the whole time and you're just falling off the cliff, and then you're like, oh, now I kind of got to dig back in and take advantage of this wind. So it's kind of like a relentless double whammy in a way.
Yeah, so to give you a small snapshot, and it's pretty close to apples comparison. The winner this year in the 40 to 44 male age group biked a 4:45. The winner last year in the 40 to 44 age group biked a 4:18.
Oh, wow.
So almost 30 minutes difference. So again, just
and I was looking at like the 10th place just to kind of get like sort of a little bit more of a general feel.
I'm going to say it's probably, I'll look real quick. So 10th place last year, and again, it's all relative. Because the bike was short. 10th place, 10th place last year was 4:26. Versus this year was, hold please. I'm sitting down, it's freezing up. Oh, there we go. 10th place this year was a 4:53.
Okay, so
it's all relative, kind of scaled back, but 30. So again, tougher conditions. The wind was bad, because again, like straight courses are great until the headwind just happens to be perfect, and it's dead on straight into your face perfectly this direction for 40 miles. So I think that made for a much tougher day. And I think a lot of athletes would probably tell you that they would trade in and receive hills than going into a headwind for what ended up being, 40 plus miles of their ride, if not more. They would trade hills any day of the week.
Yeah, man, what a mental challenge.
It is. It's because it's something you can't control. You can control your effort on hills, but yeah, just brutal. And it was interesting to watch as we were watching athletes come in from the bike. The first hour and a half, maybe, as you saw the first age groupers coming in from the bike. And I think, again, it's all relative to conditioning and preparation and first time and speed, all those things. But the first hour and a half, we watched people come in. We kind of posted up on this shaded grassy area coming in, where they were coming in to grab their T2 bags. First hour and a half, people were running. People were looking pretty. They were looking pretty jive. They were looking pretty pumped. They were ready to go run. After about the hour and a half, maybe hour and 45 mark, not just walking, but like it looked like the Walking Dead.
Mm.
They were just slow motion, like, A, I'm so glad to be on my bike. B, I am so tired. C, dear God, I can't believe I have to run a marathon right now.
Yep.
A lot of it was relief, and that was it. Like, I just can't. I'm just so glad I'm off the bike. So again, while people will tell you, and I think last year was an anomaly and people kind of got excited about that race last year, like, oh, I can have a blazing fast bike, bike ride. I can PR this ride. They probably had to eat some crow yesterday or on Saturday, because I guarantee you they probably weren't nearly as fast as they had anticipated. Because again, it goes back to the things we talk about. You can only give, the only thing you can control is your effort and your execution. And you got to be smart. And if you tried to go for a time, then you probably suffered royally and burnt way too many matches. But again, I would consider it, while it can be a really, really fast course, you add in wind and the, not requirement, but the opportunity to where you could be an arrow for the entire time. Those are things you need to think about, that some athletes are better at than others. I would say you're not one of those athletes who likes to be an arrow for, the entire time. You like to get up and down. You like to get up. You like to sit up, move around. You don't get many of those opportunities. And then especially if you're going to be in a headwind, the last thing you want to do is sit up, and be a sailboat. But again, from what I understood, that you didn't hear of many. I'm sure there was, but I didn't hear of any huge issues on the bike, any issues getting water, any issues with tons of wrecks, any issues with bad traffic and cars. So I would say overall a very, very, very safe, from a vehicular standpoint, bike course, which I think is something that people tend to underestimate when they do these races, because they picture in their mind totally closed off courses, and a lot of times you're sharing the same roads with traffic. Like Louisville, on the second loop, you could get stuck behind 4 cars.
Mm-hmm.
So from that aspect, great, but tough, and tough for a lot of reasons, but also tough for the time of year.
Yeah. Whew. That's a good bike course breakdown. I'm just still stuck in that whole thing about, if you're going in to win that long, just the mental lapses that you might have, that where your power sinks, and then it's like twice as hard to get back up to where you want to be. That kind of over and over thing has just got to be the biggest grind.
Yep.
Because the minute you slow down, then you're like moment. Because that's one thing that I ride in wind out here a lot, and the one thing I think about a lot is that sometimes if you can get going fast, like out of a corner going into wind, that momentum really helps cut through the wind. You know what I mean? It's a fine line of like how fast you should be going, because if you decide, well, I'm just not going to push it, then you could get kind of in that sailboat mode, like you're talking about, where the wind just kind of grabs you and owns you. But if you can kind of beat it with some momentum, that makes going into the wind a little bit easier. But it's such a fine line to kind of stay on top of.
Mm-hmm. You got to stay engaged.
Back and forth and back and forth, and that's where you kind of lose your energy, I think.
Yep, you got to stay engaged. Coming out of, I think we caught most athletes, you pop out of transition, or you pop out of, and I do have to say before I forget, Iron Track was pretty much on point.
This is the crow eating issue.
I know, dude. I'm gonna have to skip lunch. Was pretty much on the entire day. It got a little bit tough at the end, but other than that, it was pretty much on point.
Did you say Iron Track or
Iron Track?
Ironman Tracker.
That's the same thing. Ironman Tracker, their little MDOT app that they used.
Yeah.
It was on point. So whatever. Eating crow today. You got to admit it. You got
dialing it in, man.
You got to take it.
Extra cell towers.
Exactly. Maybe they did.
It's a rich area. They probably got a lot of them.
You're able to catch the athletes as they run out onto the run course, and then so obviously it's a 3-loop run course. A lot of it is along the waterway or very close to the right there at the lake woodlands. It is insanely spectator friendly. You honestly, you could see your athlete if you wanted to, because the great thing about the waterway is that if you post up at a certain position on so it's basically both sides. It's 3 loops again. You come out, you go around Lake Woodlands and come back on the other side of the waterway, down towards like East Shore Drive and Majesty Row, and then you take a right, and then you're going to go up along the waterway, and that's where obviously most of the spectating is. But the great thing about it is that it's easy to get from one side of the waterway to the other. So if you saw somebody coming in at like mile 6, like they made their first loop to come in at mile 6, you could go across the waterway, see them, come up, go up to the top, over a set of stairs, over where the finish line is, because the finish line is above a level, and then walk back down and see them again like 3 miles later. So there are just so many. You could see your athlete 6 to 8 times if you wanted to, without doing much running around as the spectator, without having to worry about a ton of cross streets or meeting them here and there. You can basically hang out right there on the waterway. And the interesting thing is, yeah, some of the run course is shaded, like you're protected. I wouldn't say it's a ton of protection. In the downside of that protection that the athletes have with trees and being where they are is that it also prevents sometimes from you getting a much needed breeze, which made it kind of worse, I think, for the athletes, because it got fairly hot. It's also on a lot of turns, and I do gotta say, and I'll talk about pros and cons of the run course in a second, but it's basically all on concrete. So again, I think that's something you got to prepare for if you're thinking about doing this race. I think it's going to be a little bit harder on the body. But we were able to, just to kind of give you an idea, we were able to eat lunch and dinner at a restaurant on the course. Once outside, we saw Danielle Reef come by about 5-10 minutes before she made her final pass. And then at dinner on the run course with 0 reservations and no wait.
Wow, that's huge.
Walked in, hey, you have a table? Yeah, you want to sit outside? Sure. Just be out of here by 4. Okay, it's 1:30. I think we're good. And then at dinner time, we had some time to kill. Walked up this really nice Mexican restaurant. Walked right in, sat down, and then just said, hey. So we all got our phones out, and we just told our waitress, like, hey, you're going to see us coming and going quite a bit. So you could just sit down and have dinner, and then when we were following Iron Track on the map, and then we saw him getting close, we'd all get up, walk out the door, and then see him run by and cheer him and go walk right back to our table. It was like that all over the course.
No, that's really sweet. It begs the question for me, was there just like not that many spectators? Or was there just that many restaurants?
Spectators. There's this like there's like a huge grass lawn. And I think what's kind of neat is that so below like the main street level, so the main street level where I'm talking about, where the movie theater is and these other shops and restaurants, or there's shops and restaurants there on the finish line, you have to go down a level to the waterway. And so there's restaurants kind of on top level and bottom level. And so you got people at the finish line, but the finish line is up top. So people were just really spread out. And I think there was more spectators there than I think there were at a lot of events. But again, you can't really judge that solely on this one instance, because a couple events that I've been to, like Louisville last year, of course you didn't see anybody because it was like monsoon, freezing rain, Alaska. So yeah nobody's going to want to hang out outside there. But no, there's just tons of places to set up shop in the grass to where you can just like sit down comfortably and just watch. You could bring a blanket. There's plenty of tree cover. You can just sit down. You could find whatever. The people were sitting on the lawn, bringing out coolers. It was right out front too, where hotels were. And I also just think it was just how it's set up. But again, like we didn't have to fight for anything. And I do have to say, this is a pro and a con. The run course is basically 100% totally accessible to anyone the entire time. So, positives. You can see your athlete whenever you want to for as long as you want to all day long. So, I mean, that is like there were no like barricades, there were no like you can't come here. If you needed to get to like one point to an X, you had to walk along the waterway as well on the same course the runners were on. So, you had to be careful. Again, I think that's a negative once a lot of traffic starts to come and you get to like that second and third loop where there's so many people on course and so many people that you probably have to run a little bit more to move around people because some people just aren't as aware, which could get kind of frustrating and aggravating, I think. But it made it really neat to be able to just have the people that you cared about and you were watching just that accessible, that you didn't feel like you had to meet at this point because you were going to miss them. You could just go get them. You're basically moving along the same course as the runners.
So it wasn't on roads at all? It was just all on the like sort of the paths?
I think when you get back, like coming out, I think you're on road for a little bit, like along like Panther Creek Drive and even like on maybe even some of the Woodlands Parkway. But a lot of it was on just concrete path. But some of it, like very little of it was on asphalt. Most of it was on concrete. Going through a couple tunnels. So again, there's not a ton of shade. It's somewhat protected, which again is a good thing and a bad thing. But just super spectator friendly. I mean, it just very spectator friendly. And again, like one restaurant, I can't remember the name of it now, but had its top floor was on the Main Street level right by the finish line. And then you could just walk downstairs and be back on the waterway to cheer on people at like running their loops at like around mile 18, 14, and 7. I mean, so it was very, very cool. It's very accessible again. It's a great place to spectate. Tons of restaurants, plenty of options to eat. You didn't have to fight for anything. You didn't feel, and you also, and because of the spread out nature of the waterway, and there's so many places to sit. There are benches, because I think that's just like the park and the Woodlands area. It's a place where people come to do things outside. Mm-hmm. So there's like all these benches that are set up are like along the run course. You could just post up everywhere. So it's very, very, it's a great venue. It's a great run venue.
Wow. Well, I got to tell you, you got me more interested in spectating than actually racing it.
And I'm telling you, it was flat. It's like there's always action, and you can it's just so accessible, which again I think has its drawbacks to an extent. But it's
awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
are you going to up your grade, man? 4.5 stars, or is it going to go higher?
No. I'm gonna stay 4.5.
Okay.
Just because I think my only downside of this whole race is that I think there should be a little bit of I don't want to say because it takes away from the accessibility, but I can definitely see where, because I was getting frustrated just watching, is like you got people who are probably spectating their first race walking like 4 abreast on a narrow parkway with runners coming.
Looking at their phone.
Exactly. From behind. And so I think I would have gotten...
Hey, miss.
Yeah. And you got, kids and dogs. And so downside for sure.
That's a downside. Do you got any more? I was watching the...
I don't know, because the finish line was awesome.
Was it? Okay, that's what I was going to ask about, because I was watching it on Facebook Live, and it didn't feel... I don't know if it was just because they had sound sort of pumped in directly from the mic. It just didn't feel like it was very energized or loud to me when I was watching it.
So I guess a couple things. One, it probably depends on when you were watching.
It was definitely late.
Yeah, so it was insanely loud. It was some of the best. It reminded me not of Louisville, but it reminded me of Wisconsin.
Okay.
Outside, a ton of people on both sides, because you can see them coming in from a good ways away, and then they got to do this little short out and back before they come into the finish line on a little bit of a U-turn. By that time, like...
Oh, yeah, because they were like... Mike Riley was there, and he kept looking over the crowd to see who was coming right at the end. Because I was watching it right at the end. He's like, we got to get him in.
You take this like right, and you go down it down a small hill, and then make a U-turn and run up it to go to the finish. And you're like, really? Come on. But it was jamming. It was jamming. It seemed like when I was there, at least, it seemed very, again, I think with how spread out it is you don't get really a full effect. It's not covered like a Louisville. It's totally outside like it is at Madison. And then you just go straight. It was also very easy to find your athlete as they finished, because it was just one big long straightaway. But there was tons of people down there, tons of people who weren't even. And it was just interesting. It was like prom night, I guess. Locally, there's a bunch of people in like their prom dresses and tuxedo.
That's a nice touch.
And, yeah, well, you kind of brighten the place up a little bit. But I thought it was a very cool finish.
I
wouldn't say there was anything super special about it. Louisville obviously is inside, which I think gives it a really cool feel. Madison, it's right there by the Capitol. I think that's a pretty cool feel. So I wouldn't say there's like one particular iconic image that you have like you have at those other races, but it's smack dab right in the action, and it was cool. It was very cool.
Mm-hmm. And I was watching late at night, and it was definitely cool. And I want to give props to Starkey and Daniela Reef. They were out there at the very end handing out medals and high-fiving, and it was at midnight, and I was just like super impressed by that. And I think one other pro was out there, but I can't remember who it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think that's really cool because they were out there with Mike Rowley on the carpet and handing out high-fives, and it was just a pretty cool vibe. And
yeah, it was. It was a cool vibe.
Kudos to them for hanging around, and because they had, that was 7 hours earlier. They had, crossed the finish line roughly.
Yeah.
Probably.
After just like land on the line, and in what ended up being just a very sneaky hot day. So overall, I think, kind of my overall feedback for the race. Obviously, the two things that are the most difficult about this race are the timing and the temps. The timing makes it very difficult for a lot of people in that you're going to have to do the majority of your training inside. You're not going to get a ton of outdoor riding in, and that makes it very, very difficult for a lot of athletes. And then obviously the other thing is temperature. Is just you'd have to be very, very, very diligent in your training to make sure you're prepared to withstand that kind of heat, and you got to just be very diligent about it. I think kind of similarly the same thing applies though with being basically stuck inside for your trainer rides. Is you can replicate that pretty closely. Being on the trainer, but you need to spend a lot of time in aero because the trainer is a great thing in terms of prepping for this kind of a race. You're in aero, you don't get any breaks. You gotta be moving those legs the entire time. So I just think timing and temps make it for a little more difficult. But if you're someone who can focus, because again, I think early season races are very, very, very attractive for people too. Like if you have the wherewithal and you have the motivation, you have the determination and commitment, and you can make the time to get in your training in the winter and the fall, or the fall and then the winter and then early spring, it opens up your whole season. Not to do more races necessarily, but to not have your summer taken by 5-6 hour rides on the weekends. So it's kind of one of those give and take things. But so I think definitely specific preparation required for this race, given its timing and given the temperature and given the course terrain. But if you're that kind of a person who likes that, I mean, hell, it's a great early season race if and only if you are comfortable riding, obviously depending on where you live, but if you're comfortable doing a lot of your rides on the trainer, and you're willing to put in that time. And so I think it's kind of like a give and take if you're a parent or if you're single or you're just married. It's like what am I willing to do? If I'm looking at this race, I'm looking at it logistically and then strategically for yourself as an athlete, but then also with your family. Am I willing and capable, and is it worth it to put in those long winter spring hours on the trainer? to where, listen, you probably ain't missing much anyway. It's like you're going to be going out and partying a ton. You don't have the extra daylight hours to do a bunch of fun things. But so is putting that time in worth it to get your spring and summer back? You're probably going to race them, but you might be one of those ridiculous people who does like 3 Ironman in a year, so you could care less. But for some people, if they're trying to look at do one, summer is busier. Once school lets out, it's family vacations and sports, but you get so many more opportunities to do things. So I think it's a draw for a reason. And so again, I think you have to be mentally prepared for what it's going to take. And have that conversation with yourself on and then prepare yourself to run outside on sidewalks, prepare to swim, a lot. So I think, can you do it? Sure, absolutely. But there are certain specific things about this race that you need to take into account in terms of your preparation, and again, just the timing and the temps.
Sounds good.
All right, dude. That was fun. I enjoyed giving that. I don't necessarily like the fact that I talked the whole time, and you always have good insights, but I was there, and
you were there. It was your baby, man.
I was there. But yeah,
the wheel.
So again, 4.5 stars. I would definitely encourage anyone to look into it. They did a great job. Great feedback, and so great job to everyone. Congratulations to everyone and anyone who towed the line and went out there and gave it their best. It was a very tough day. It was super hot. So congratulations to everyone who did that race. And again, a huge congrats to the race organizers and the city itself. They put on a really awesome event. People only like to bash places and race organizers and directors and volunteers for the things that don't happen, but everything I saw, I felt like it ran very smoothly and nothing but good things. So again, kudos to everyone involved with that race, and kudos to the city right there in the Woodlands. Excellent job, very impressed, and I'm tempted, but we'll see. I will, hey, we'll check you again. We appreciate you listening. crushingiron.com for all your needs. Subscribe, review. And we'll probably see you on Thursday.
Shout out to the 4 club finishers.
Heck yeah.
We had C26 Club. Check it out at crushingiron.com. We had 4 finishers down there. It was awesome to track and watch them. And I guess that's it for today, man.
Well done.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
See you dude.